Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest updates from the world of sports, gambling, and pop culture. Because you can't have a show without hot takes or a Tiger King meme these days. Know what I'm saying? Now, with over 200 episodes and ready to get after it again, here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Good evening and welcome to the show, everyone. Hope you are doing well in spite of everything that's gone on this week that I'm not going to get into. But let's just talk about some football and get our minds off of everything that's going on right now. So we got tomorrow begins the NFL Wildcard weekend, which is usually one of my most favorite weekends of the year. Unfortunately, I'm going to be very busy with other matters, so I will not be able to watch all these games in their entirety as I would normally like, but I do have a pretty general feel of how I think these games are going to go and kind of walk through my thought process on the DFS slate for the Saturday contest, the Sunday contest, and if some of you want to play the combined contest on DK with all 6 wildcard games, I'll try to put together a lineup for that one as well. So getting right down to it, with the first wildcard matchup on Saturday, we've got the Bills, the number 2 seed in the AFC, hosting the Indianapolis Colts, the 7th seed. And here's the deal. You know, with this added wildcard spot, the Colts are in this year. They technically would have blown their opportunity to make the playoffs, if not because of the game they gave away to the Steelers. But be that as it may, the Colts come in and really solid team. People keep looking at the Colts as this walkover game for the Bills. This is a very dangerous matchup for the Bills because the Bills are the team that everyone's talking about, that they're the maybe the best team in the AFC, maybe better than the Chiefs. A lot of hype going into Josh Allen and the way the Bills are playing, and respectably so. The Bills have had an incredible year. Josh Allen's had an incredible year. His accuracy on deep balls has risen dramatically to the point where he's got a 10 percentage point improvement on deep ball passes this year. A lot of that I attribute to just how well Stephon Diggs has played. Note to NFL teams, if you have a number 1 wide receiver, you don't necessarily trade him. And I know Minnesota had Adam Thielen, but I said this last week, there's a difference between certain guys, and yes, Justin Jefferson's good. He's going to develop into a very good, excellent receiver and probably a number 1 receiver as well, just as how well he's playing. But man, it is very hard to find wide receivers the caliber of Stephon Diggs, and he's had his breakout year because the knock on Diggs was he would have some incredible games, but he would disappear in various parts of the season. This year, he's been very consistent as the number 1 receiver for Buffalo, and it's shown dramatically in Josh Allen's numbers because he's got that vertical threat to use that big arm on and just have him Diggs run under the ball. And, of course, Diggs is always great on slant routes, and Allen's got the velocity on that ball to hit the slant route and just let Diggs get out in front of it and go. Because, you know, again, with a slant route, if you throw it out in front of a receiver that's fast enough, they can hit the proper seam and just break loose, which is what you saw on a couple of primetime games already with the Bills. So, you know, there's a lot to like about the Bills. Here's the thing, though, about the Colts. The Colts play a very ugly style of football defensively. And in what I mean by that is the Colts will run a 3-safety look by and large. So, what ends up being the case is they will jam your wide receivers up at the top. But the other problem that you'll kind of run into is the fact that they also have very talented group of corners. Now, the break the Bills catch is that Rock Ya-Sin, the second-year cornerback for the Colts, is going to be out for this game. He didn't. It doesn't appear he's going to clear concussion protocol, so they're going to have a backup in there in T.J. Carey, who based off of his work over the last couple of years, very solid corner. So it's not as though they have a blatant mismatch at corner. But Xavier Rhodes is still there. Not quite top of the level corner as we've seen in the past with Rhodes. But in terms of what you'll see with Rhodes, at least playing up top, the Colts are going to be able to cause problems for the Bills. And like I said, this is going to be a more methodical type of approach that the Bills are going to have to take if they're going to move the ball. Because, for those of you who haven't really watched the NFL closely at all this year, the Buffalo Bills cannot run the football. They are not a good running team. They will just chuck the ball, and they know that they're not very good at running the ball, so they prioritize chucking the ball. So you're going to see Josh Allen throw this ball 40 to 45 times, most likely. The key here is how the Colts are able to manage the Bills' passing attack. And what I think is going to happen more often than not is they're going to give up the chunk plays and try to go with the bend, don't break model. So I think, from a lineup building standpoint, it's you're going to see, and there's one piece that I haven't talked about yet, and I'll get to that. What you're going to see with the Bills wide receivers, they're going to have opportunities to catch the ball because the Bills, like I said, they're going to chuck the ball quite a bit with Josh Allen. They'll try to run it a couple of times with Devin Singletary or Zach Moss to keep the Colts honest, but DeForest Buckner is still a beast in the middle for the Colts. Probably I'd say probably number 2 to Aaron Donald in terms of defensive linemen in the league in the interior. I know Giants fans are going to want to talk up Leonard Williams and the performance he had this year. Yes, Leonard Williams had an excellent year, but Buckner plays in the tougher division and had better numbers, in my opinion. So, that's just kind of what it is. It was just a better level of competition he was playing against as well. So, that's why I really don't think the Bills are going to try to run the ball. So from a DFS perspective, to me, this is a complete fade of the Bills' rushing attack. People have this in their heads that because the Bills are such a heavy favorite, because right now, from a betting standpoint, the Bills are a 6-point favorite. Money line, they're in the minus. They're above minus 280. So obviously, you'd be betting over 280 to make $100 on a bet. But I really don't like it. That spread is just a little bit too aggressive for the Bills. Yes, the Bills are good. Colts can definitely keep this game close. And the 51 total, again, I think folks are getting too excited about the potential for scoring in this game. I actually think that this is going to come in under that 51 total. What you're more likely to see is the Bills methodically trying to keep drives going, more so than they have in the regular season. In the regular season, they did hit a lot of big plays. I think the Colts take away the big plays that you typically would see with Stephon Diggs. The Colts are a very good tackling team. I just don't see the massive yardage plays that you're more accustomed to seeing with the Bills. Now, the other aspect of this is there's a good chance Cole Beasley does not play in this game. Cole Beasley is still pretty banged up with a knee issue. They're saying he's 50-50, but it's an early kickoff. They're the 1:00 game. So I have a really tough time if Cole Beasley is still only 50-50 and it's a 1 o'clock kickoff and it's a playoff game. Yeah, could they keep him active? Of course, it's the playoffs. But are they really going to risk Cole Beasley when they have Super Bowl aspirations because they rushed him back too soon? I just don't see it. I really don't. So in my mind, it's going to be Diggs, and you're probably going to see Gabriel Davis come back into the fold. John Brown rejoined the Bills' wide receiver core last week, and John Brown typically was more of the speedster, stretch the field, deep threat. Gabe Davis did that role very well, but he can also run crossing routes, which is not necessarily John Brown's forte. So this is kind of an interesting way to look at it from a DFS perspective. A lot of folks have been kind of penciling in, okay, Cole Beasley's out, so let's pair Josh Allen with Diggs and Brown because Cole Beasley is also priced up on DraftKings. Obviously, the pricing came out before some of the injury news updates that we got during the week, but Beasley was pretty pricey to begin with, so I just didn't have any appetite for playing Beasley at all this week. Just the fact that he was, I believe it was 6,300 on DraftKings, and the price was up there on FanDuel as well. Beasley is a move to sticks kind of guy, not a touchdown guy. If you're paying over $6,000 for a wide receiver on DraftKings this week, you got to have touchdown potential, in my opinion, to get there. Because with a 3-game slate, realistically, there are going to be some opportunities to get points. So I look at it as a play of, Josh Allen has the highest ceiling potential of the quarterbacks on this slate. If anyone is thinking otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. Josh Allen is going to be chucking the ball quite a bit, and he has the best rushing potential because Russell Wilson, while he can scramble, Russell Wilson's not looking to scramble to get yardage. He's scrambling to find another wide receiver down the field. Josh Allen will take off and run when presented the opportunity. Now, do I think he's going to get a number of opportunities to run against the Colts? Not really. Scramble for a first down, yeah. But in terms of someone losing contained on Josh Allen and not looking him down, and he just takes advantage of open space and runs 10, 15 yards down the field unabated, I just don't see that really happening. It's got to be a busted play for that to happen for Josh Allen. So, realistically, from a rushing perspective, I probably give him less than, if I was doing a line, and I haven't checked the rushing props yet, I probably should have. But, I really wouldn't see Josh Allen running for more than probably like 25, 26 yards. Just being honest, and now I'm really curious what the rushing prop might be for Josh Allen. Let's see here. If I got Josh Allen, I don't see an individual prop here for him. But that's just something that I would kind of look at. Is that you're going to at least see different aspects of Josh Allen just kind of throwing down the field. And here's the thing. Most passing yards on Wildcard weekend for all the QBs, Josh Allen's the favorite. He's plus 240 versus every other QB on the board here between Brady, Roethlisberger, Russell Wilson, Breeze. Actually, I kind of like that. I actually kind of like those numbers. If you're telling me that, now the one thing I would say is there is a good chance that Tom Brady throws for over 300 yards Saturday night. So that is one caveat to this that could put a damper on yardage for that stat. But I just kind of look at it from the standpoint of from the Bills. You kind of know who the go-to plays are. You're taking Allen, you're taking Diggs, and then you could probably, depending on how you want to build out your lineup, Gabriel Davis is a play and John Brown certainly a play. But I actually would prefer, if it was a large field GPP, and by large field, I'm talking more than 500 entries, by and large for certain slates, you can have thousands and thousands of entries. But once you get into these smaller game slates, that those possibilities come a little bit more tighter. So then it just becomes some of the individual breakdowns. But in a large scale tournament, I would actually play Gabriel Davis because a lot of people are going to be hedging on just playing John Brown with Diggs together and just expecting the Bills to romp over the Colts. I just think that, Gabe Davis gives you a little bit more differential, and it's probably going to see more of the intermediate routes than John Brown will. That's just the way I'm kind of looking at it. There is a chance that Cole Beasley even plays. And if Beasley plays, then that changes the script entirely because I definitely wouldn't want either Brown or Davis on my roster if Beasley is given a full healthy go. I'm just not rostering Beasley because, as I said, the price tag on Beasley just makes it cost prohibitive versus some of the other options on the slate tomorrow. So just couple of thoughts on the Bills side. On the Colts side, like I said, I think the Colts are a live dog. I think they have a very real chance of winning this game. The biggest knock on the Colts is Phillip Rivers is the second best quarterback on their team. I've said this repeatedly. Phillip Rivers is the second best quarterback on their team. The Colts signed Phillip Rivers in free agency. No one quite understood what the rationale was. They cited veteran leadership, but, in critical moments and key moments throughout the year, Phillip Rivers has been the worst enemy for the Colts, making bad mistakes. The Steelers game is the Tannemout version of it because he gave away that game in such ridiculous fashion with some of the awful decisions he made. But that's classic Phillip Rivers when he gets into tight situations. He makes very, very questionable decisions. So, I just look at it from the standpoint of, I like the Colts. If you're telling me, give me a wild card team that has a chance to pull off an upset that no one's expecting, I look at it and I just point to the Colts. The Colts have the breakdown because if you're attacking the Bills defense, the way you would go after them is with a running attack. And the Colts have one of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line in the NFL. So to me, the Colts can run, they can run block, they can certainly pass block. If they stay within their game plan of running the rock with Jonathan Taylor, who they finally decided to give establish the run with as the year wore on, it just made that offense click far more than what they had in place previously. And, by and large, the Colts are a solid offense. Nothing spectacular. They're not going to wow you with their passing attack because, again, Phillip Rivers is the second best quarterback on their team, and Jacoby Brissett is an above-average NFL QB. I won't say good. I'll say above average. He can get the job done. He's still a game manager. I just think he's a better game manager than Rivers because Rivers will just make some ridiculous throws that you're scratching your head. What are you thinking, Phil? And Phil does not have the juice anymore that he once had to make spectacular plays down the field. So, again, I like the Colts if they can keep this game close and just churn clock by running it with Jonathan Taylor. Taylor has a rushing prop of 79 yards in this game. So they actually not 79, 89 yards in this game. Man, so the over-under total for Jonathan Taylor basically is 89.5 yards. I think he goes over that, to be honest. The way he doesn't go over it is if Buffalo just steamrolls the Colts and the Colts just get blitzkrieged early. They can't get into a rhythm, and then they're just playing from behind, and Phil's just checking it. And if Phil's chucking it, then yeah, Bill's defense certainly can put the game away, because Phil is liable to throw a pick six if he's throwing more than 25 times a game in the playoffs. Like, the Colts actually need Phillip Rivers to throw, 23, 24, like 25 and above is when Phil starts feeling himself, getting into a rhythm. And when Phil starts feeling himself, that's usually when the wheels start coming off the bus, because Phil, again, will just start seeing things that aren't there in the playoffs. Like, there are just games upon games I've seen Phillip Rivers with the Chargers just shaking my head, And again, could Phil play within himself? Yeah, we've seen Phil do this before in the playoffs, where he plays a nice controlled game. He's done it. He can do it. It's just when he doesn't do too much, that's when he's effective. And that's what the Colts provide for him. They can give him an outlet just to make a couple of throws and just let the running attack do the work. That's the Colts' path to victory. Now, on the Colts side, who would I actually want to play in that scenario? Basically, it's just Jonathan Taylor. He's priced up on DraftKings, and, it's one of those things where, yeah, he's the most expensive running back for good reason. He's $7,900 on DraftKings. He's $8,800 on FanDuel. But unless the game script gets completely away from him, you at least have a decent enough floor, because you can run on the Bills' defense. That is their one weakness. They're not a great run-stopping defense. They're about NFL average. And given the fact that, like I said, the Colts have one of, if not the best offensive line of football, the advantage goes to the Colts. They should be able to control the line of scrimmage and be able to control clock by running the football if they establish the run early and just limit the amount of possessions the Bills have. They can keep this game. They can keep this game close, and the closer this game gets into the latter half, then you might see the Bills start to press, and that's actually what you saw last year with the Bills and Josh Allen, because that game against the Texans in the Wildcard last year was one of the most perplexing games, because between Bill O'Brien being Bill O'Brien, trying to lose that game for the Texans with just dumb coaching decisions, and Josh Allen just getting way too excited about being in the playoffs and trying to do too much, making bad decisions all over the place. That was one of the most helter-skelter games you'll ever see, but poorly played games you'll ever see in the playoffs. So there is a pathway for the Colts to win and getting the Bills discombobulated. So this is not the slam dunk that people are pretending it to be. I've seen the game picks that folks have had thus far, and yeah, I get the picks for the Bills, but this is not an easy game. The Bills definitely have their hands full with this matchup. They did not get any favors from the NFL in terms of teams that they could have played instead, because I definitely think the Bills probably would have opted for playing I think they probably would have rather have played the Browns, to be perfectly honest. The Bills are actually a better matchup wise. I think the Browns would have been a better matchup for the Bills than what they actually had to deal with. But you don't get to choose your opponents, even though you're a higher seed. That may be something that the NFL may want to consider in the future now that they've introduced this wild card format. If you're the higher, if you're the second seed that lost, the second seed that lost their bye, technically, if you lost your bye as the second seed, maybe you should be able to call out which opponent you get to face instead of just being slotted in an opponent. But again, that's just me thinking out loud. All right, second game. Like I said, I understand why people are picking the Bills, but that's a live dog right there in the Colts. It is not as clear cut as people are making it out to be. So, yes, the Bills should win that game. That's not a lock. And I know I spent a lot of time talking about that game, but you really need to understand in terms of your roster build, kind of getting that, like what you actually expect the game to turn out to be, and building it out accordingly to kind of focus on it that way. All right, so the second game, Rams-Seahawks. All right, so important caveat here. We have no idea who's starting for the Rams as of yet. Sean McVay has been very coy about it. For those of you who don't know, Jared Goff, the starting quarterback for the Rams, injured his thumb in week 16, had to get thumb surgery. The Rams had a win and get in scenario. There was a very real chance that the Rams were going to miss the playoffs if they lost to the Cardinals in week 17. And their backup, John Wolford, of the XFL fame that for those of you who watch the XFL, they said he was the MVP. I honestly kind of lost track of the XFL by and large after the first 2 weeks, but he played admirably. I mean, he didn't throw for any great set of yardage. I mean, he was about $150, but he was efficient with the ball, got the ball out quickly, had a diverse route tree in terms of receivers who caught passes, and the Rams ran the ball. Cam Akers surprisingly came back from a high ankle sprain, no less, and was very effective. Got over 25 touches, and to be honest, I've said this last week, and I'm going to maintain it. The Seattle Seahawks do not look right heading into the postseason. They have not been, their pass blocking has not been great. Russell Wilson's been taking hits, even though he scrambles quite a bit. They cannot get the passing game going, and Seattle basically has just defaulted back to what they normally want to do, is just run the ball. But they're not a good run blocking team this year either. Like the Seattle, it's kind of like head scratching because we thought it kind of in the middle part of this year, Seattle figured it out where, yeah, you kind of need to let Russ cook and let him do a little bit more innovative things with the offense. Then they lost a couple of games, and Pete Carroll just pulled the reins back hard. And DK Metcalf has been in witness protection ever since. And, the thing about this game is it's a bad matchup for Seattle. Division rival, but the Rams built out their corners, and Jalen Ramsey thus far has had DK Metcalf's number. Now, that's not to say DK Metcalf can't go off against Jalen Ramsey, because Metcalf is a physical specimen of a human being. Just in terms of his athleticism and strength, probably the most jacked wide receiver. He is the most jacked wide receiver in the league. That's not even a question. But in terms of physical prowess, like, Metcalf is better than basically every other wide receiver in terms of the measurables of what he can do physically. Now, Jalen Ramsey is still one of the top three, probably, maybe. I mean, Jalen Ramsey will tell you he's the best corner in the league. there's a lot of people who could lay claim to that. You got Tre'Davious White on the Bills. You got Stephon Gilmore on the Pats. But Ramsey's right up there. And, in terms of the Seattle passing game, I just don't think that the play calling for Seattle, they even want to go down that route. Obviously Russell Wilson is going to throw the ball occasionally, but they're going to focus more on running it with Chris Carson, play field position, and grind out a win against the Rams. This game's got the lowest total of all three matchups, and deservedly so, because the Rams are going to run it with Cam Akers as well. So this is the game where I would say, if for your running back builds, you should be looking at least one running back from this game. I don't know if you want to play. I'm probably going to end up playing both running backs in this game because I think the volume alone and the fact that someone eventually is going to have to score in this game, and most likely it's going to be a rushing touchdown, that, playing Akers and Carson could be a viable pathway in terms of getting points. Now, in terms of, like I said, from a DFS perspective, this game's going to feature a lot of rushing attempts because we still don't know the Rams quarterbacking situation. Honestly, I think Wolford is a better option than Goff at this point, because Goff was not playing well before he got injured. To be perfectly blunt, Goff was terrible this year. By and large, Jared Goff is one of the few quarterbacks in the league. I can honestly say that Daniel Jones would have a good shot at beating out over the course of the year in terms of production if they were given the exact same weapons in terms of wide receivers and offensive line. I think Daniel Jones would actually have a decent shot at beating out Jared Goff. That's how little I think of Jared Goff as an NFL QB. Because, as I told you folks before, Daniel Jones is not necessarily a starting NFL QB. I think he's an excellent backup because he has potential to be very good in very small spots and god-awful in other spots if you keep him over the long haul. But the moments of brilliance that you can see with Daniel Jones probably trumps what Jared Goff does when he's in a good rhythm. Because Jared Goff needs to be in a rhythm as a passer to be good. And in the playoffs, you rarely get rhythm. You have to kind of basically operate virtuoso and improv. And Jared Goff just is not that guy. So to me, like, Jared Goff is almost dead weight on this team. I would almost say that they're better off taking a guy like Wolford, who at least they were willing to scramble with him a bit. Like, they were willing to do some wonkier things in that playbook just to disguise the fact that it was not Goff behind center. And maybe there are some other weaknesses in Wolford's game that we'll be able to figure out. But Goff by himself right now probably couldn't get this win done for the Rams unless Akers has a monster game. So to me, from a DFS perspective, I would play at least one of the running backs between Carson and Akers. They're going to get a ton of volume. They're going to get 25 plus touches in this game. At least one of them will get 25 plus touches. Most likely, if this game goes as low scoring as it possibly could be, there's a very real chance that both of these guys get 30 plus touches in the game itself. And it still stays under 40. The over-under is 42, but there's a very real chance this game is like a 20-17 type of affair because the Seahawks are only favored by a field goal. The Rams, like I said, they are a live dog. So this one probably is going to come down to a field goal by and large. Now, in terms of other options for Seattle, yeah, could you play Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson is too good of a QB to say he's not a good play. He's too good. He can make stuff happen. The problem is that there's so few pathways for Russ to actually get there passing wise. It's not a good matchup for a lot of volume throws. So you're gonna need to have some massive broken down plays for him to throw the ball down the field to wide receivers to really have it make worthwhile, because the Seattle doesn't really do a ton of they'll do some wide receiver screens, but again, it's not a huge part of their offensive game plan. So that's why, because they featured less of the wide receiver screens with Lockett as well down the stretch. So I just don't really feel great about recommending any other plays besides the running backs in this one, because again, could you go with a DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett with a Russell Wilson stack? Yeah. Is it an optimal play? No. And because of the Rams situation, it makes it hard to recommend Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods, because you just don't know who's going to be the QB. If it's Goff, I think they still kind of keep the training wheels on him and not have him throw that much. And if it's Wolford, they're still going to keep the training wheels on in a way, because they're not going to want to overexpose him because he just hasn't had that much practice time with the first team. So that's just kind of the way I look at it here. And then for the nightcap, we've got Tampa Bay traveling to Washington to play the football team that is nameless. I already talked about this at length. I think Brady rolls in there and smashes this team. Listen, the sanctimonious speech by Joe Judge, the head coach of my New York Football Giants, was insufferable. Because the fact of the matter is, the NFC East was hot garbage this year. Complete and utter hot garbage. With that being said, Washington won the division. They got to 7 wins. Even though they lost both games to the Giants. Again, this division was hot garbage. Washington, they have a good pass rush. That's about it. Their offensive line played better than expected, but it's not like they got any world beaters on that offensive line. And knowing the fact that Tampa Bay has Jason Pierre-Paul, and because Jason Pierre-Paul was playing on the Giants, he was not in the postseason all that often before he got traded to Tampa. And obviously, Tampa was not a playoff contender prior to Tom Brady's arrival. He's been out of the playoffs for multiple years. I actually think it's a decade since Jason Pierre-Paul's been in the postseason. As crazy as it sounds with the Giants' last Super Bowl run, Pierre-Paul is going to be a beast in the playoffs. Point blank. He causes havoc. He is a playoff performer. I just look at this and just say that, Alex Smith, I worry about Alex Smith, because even when he came back from his leg surgery, he doesn't push off on that leg. He doesn't plant with that leg either. He makes sure to not put himself in a vulnerable position, but he can't maneuver around to avoid a pass rush. I think Tampa gets to him early and often. And, if he takes, again, you hope for the best, but I'm not sure if Alex Smith can take a hard hit. And I'm just saying, I think he's going to get hit by Jason Pierre-Paul. I think the Tampa is going to get sacks on Washington. And I know that Tampa, they're going to want to try to get in on track early and often against Washington. Now, Washington has a good, I shouldn't say good. They have an excellent pass rush with Chase Young. Great young player. They got some nice studs on the defensive line. They can actually rush the passer and give Tampa some trouble if they can hit Brady. Here's the thing with Tampa. Tom Brady knows how to play in the postseason. If you give him weapons that can get off the line of scrimmage and get separation, the ball's going to be out of his hands. You have to be able to jam his receivers and make sure that they can't get separation within 2 seconds. I don't know if Washington can do that consistently. They're not that great of a secondary. They're just not. And I know Mike Evans is banged up, but I hope people remember that Antonio Brown is still one of the top 10 receivers in football. I know he didn't play that much this season because of everything that's gone on, but we still haven't seen AB be AB yet, and it's not like he fell off a cliff. The guy still has the juice. Now, I know people are looking at Chris Godwin, but this is an Antonio Brown kind of primetime game performance where he could light it up and score a couple of touchdowns. And Brady has a great rapport with Antonio Brown, and he will like to make Antonio Brown look good. I'm just saying, he also made sure that Antonio Brown got his performance bonus at the end of the year, hence the reason why Tampa was running up the score against Atlanta. Brady was trying to make sure that all of his guys got their performance bonuses to cap off the season. Now, on the Washington side, who are we going with since I'm already predicting a massive Tampa win? It's hard. I mean, honestly, because most people are going to gravitate towards Logan Thomas, the tight end for Washington, because he's had a very good second half of the year. The problem with going with Logan Thomas is, if you look at some of the game tape as to why he was putting up these great numbers in the second half of the year, is that Alex Smith was injured, and when Washington went back to Dwayne Haskins, Haskins wasn't doing the proper progressions in, picking out which receiver to throw the ball to. He was kind of just chucking to the first read, whether it was a running back or, more often than not, Logan Thomas. So realistically, he wasn't running the offense. So a lot of Thomas's stats got boosted because of the dump offs that were relatively quick. Now that Alex Smith is behind center, it's probably going to be a more diverse route tree. And, given the fact that Logan Thomas is the most expensive tight end on the slate, salary-wise, you kind of need you're almost in a position where you need the touchdown from Logan Thomas to get value over some of the guys you're bypassing to play Logan Thomas. It's a weird dynamic because I just don't see Logan Thomas getting the volume of the dump offs that he normally would. Now, Ron Rivera did talk about possibly rotating QBs, and Haskins obviously got cut, so that now the backup would be Taylor Heineke. Taylor Heineke doesn't really have much of a throwing arm at all. It's really more of a pop gun. Yeah, he could just dump it off to Logan Thomas, so that would technically be your pathway to get there. But risk of injury or quarterback rotation nonsense, that's a lot to be banking on. And that's why I just don't like Logan Thomas as a play. Realistically, who else might be a play for Washington? It's hard to recommend Terry McLaurin because Terry McLaurin is 6,300 on DraftKings, 7,100 on FanDuel. Realistically, I would rather play Antonio Brown for less money. And even then, Chris Godwin could get into the end zone. He's got a better opportunity of getting into the end zone in the blowout than Terry McLaurin does. But, on DraftKings, I can understand the play just because he may get enough volume to possibly get there. And maybe he might get into the end zone. It's a tough ask. It's a tough ask to actually find Washington players to go with. Antonio Gibson, 5,700 on DraftKings, 6,200 on FanDuel, might be the play. J.D. McKissick, 4,900 on DraftKings, 5,400 on FanDuel, might be playable. But the play I like the most, beyond just playing AB in this game, is Ronald Jones. I think Tampa is going to smash Washington. And once they're up, they're going to run the ball to salt away the clock. And Washington's not a great, they're a good pass rushing team. They're decent against the run. But if the game's out of hand and, they know they're out of it, they're going to pack it in and call it a day. And Ronald Jones is going to have a good day running the football in the second half of the game. So at 5,500 on DraftKings and 6,700 on FanDuel, I really like Ronald Jones. I just don't see Washington putting up a ton of points in this one. It's a big ask. It's a 44.5 total, but realistically, no one's expecting Washington to score. The betting markets have Washington's team total at 17.5. I think it's a real stretch, Washington even getting to 17 in a blowout. If this game stays as close where it's only 27-17, I think that's a moral victory that Washington takes. I just look at this, and I told you, I bet the 7.5 because I think Tampa blows them out by double digits easy. I don't think this game is even remotely close in the second half because I don't see Washington being able to move the ball effectively enough to keep Tampa from wearing out that defense. And Tom Brady will quick snap them, get them in a hurry up 2-minute drill situations, get Chase Young tired. He's going to keep getting the ball out of his hand quickly. Tom has been through this game script before. The teams that get to Brady are the ones that can run the football and rush the passer. I don't think Washington rushing wise, that offensive line, it's just Gibson did well against NFC East opponents because the NFC East is hot garbage. I just don't see where Washington is able to have any effect on the tempo of this game. I just don't see it. And because of that, I think Tampa eventually wears out that defense entirely, and then we get into the blowout range, and then it's Ronald Jones time in the second half, and maybe you see some Leonard Fournette too, but Jones is going to be the lead back for Tampa, so he gets the nod for a DFS play. Now, I talked about this before with Josh Allen possibly not leading the entire Saturday slate or the weekend in terms of passing yards. Because if we talk about the Sunday slate, there's a reason why Allen and Brady are the two favorites to lead the quarterbacks in passing yards. But there's a very real chance Tom Brady can get more passing yards than Josh Allen. If the Colts can slow down the Bills enough and make it more of a methodical game, then you could see Josh Allen not have the monster throwing game. Yeah, Josh Allen can get to a 300-yard game, but there's a very real possibility that Brady could be thrown for 325, 350 in this game. It's not the craziest thing in the world that Brady throws for that many yards against Washington, because, like I said, if this gets into a blowout type of game and they get on them early, yeah, I can definitely see Tampa, they're not going to, again, this is the postseason. You're not pulling your starters that quickly in game. So, until it gets to the fourth quarter, they're still going to be playing. I can definitely see Brady breaking 300 yards and then some if everything goes according to plan, because I think there are going to be matchups to be had with that many wide receivers of that talent level versus the secondary of Washington. Brady's going to find the matchups that he wants to exploit, and that's why I can see Brady getting massive passing yardage in this game. And, one guy I didn't really talk about is Gronk. In the red zone, Gronk is still going to be one of Brady's favorite targets, and Washington has given up those types of routes in the red zone this year. So Gronk is definitely in play, in my opinion, on DraftKings and FanDuel. Just because of the tight end position being as meh as possible. Guys like Gronk and Dawson Knox that had the red zone targets, those are going to be my plays at tight end. I just can't get there with Logan Thomas this week. I know folks are going to try to squeeze in Logan Thomas thinking that, if it's a blowout, it's going to be a bunch of dump offs. He's going to get there yardage wise. I can see a pathway for Logan Thomas to get there. I just, I don't necessarily see Alex Smith conceding that Logan Thomas is the best option optimally to keep throwing if they need to get back into it. I think he's going to try to stretch it down the field to the wide receivers. So, like I said, I expect Tampa to roll in that one. And I know a lot of folks are expecting Tampa to roll too. So, like I said, even though I said don't be so dismissive of certain matchups, you got to be able to find a pathway to victory for some of these wild card games. And I just, barring further injury to players on Tampa, I just don't see Washington getting there. Like they have a good pass rush, but people don't talk enough about Tampa's offensive line. Tristan Wirfs, and I'll be the first to admit it, as a right tackle, as a rookie, has played at such a high level that there's a very real chance that he could have made All-Pro. That's how good Wirfs was, and again, it kind of makes the Giants look even dumber because both Wirfs and Mekhi Becton had outplayed Andrew Thomas, who was the first offensive lineman taken, and Becton played left tackle better than Thomas by and large for the Jets, and I was wrong on that one. I had big doubts about Becton's weight issues and ability to be a left tackle in the league, and he did the job with his athleticism. That translated quite well. And Wirfs, even though he played right tackle, he played it so well that honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he played left tackle adequately as well. I thought Wirfs was a natural right tackle that couldn't play left tackle, but he played right tackle so well that if you could play right tackle that well, you should be able to hold your own against some of the pass rushers on the left-hand side in the QB's blind spot. So, like I said, I just don't see a pathway for Washington to get there because Tampa's offense, they're outside of Chase Young. Tampa has the next 10 best. Yeah, McLaurin is a good wide receiver. Tampa has better wide receiver. I just don't see a whole lot there. It's a very hard sell in terms of the players. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say the next 10 best players are. But if you're doing the 10 best players in this game, Washington basically has two of them. that being Chase Young and McLaurin. I wouldn't have Logan Thomas in the top 10 of players in this game. Thomas had an excellent year, but a lot of this was garbage stuffing stats. So I have to kind of bear that into context. I just, talent-wise, this is the most disparate game of the entire weekend. So I just, like I said, it's Tampa all the way, in my opinion, on that one. If Tampa blows that one, then, man, it's a stand on Brady's record, because that was about as favorable as a matchup as you could possibly get for the playoffs. Again, Washington 7-9. The NFC East was hot garbage. That's all there is to it. They just it's a great matchup for Tampa. That's all there is to say about that. So moving on, let's talk about the Sunday matchups, because I think it's important to kind of get a sense of realistically where things stand. And it's very interesting with the Sunday slate, because I think you're going to see a lot of coin flip matchups. And I know some of you who are looking at the betting lines are going to say, Dwayne, what do you mean they were coin flip matchups? Look at some of the spreads here. I'm going to explain. First off, we got Tennessee hosting the Ravens, and the Ravens are actually favored as the road team. Again, I don't get this one. I already bet this one in favor of Tennessee, because I got them at the 3.5 number. It's now down to 3. But to me, this one's a better matchup for the Titans than it is the Ravens. I know the narrative is the Ravens want revenge for last year with the Titans knocking the Ravens out when the Ravens were the number 2 seed. You can do the revenge narrative all you want, but at the end of the day, Tennessee can run block, control clock, and while they don't have a very good defense, their defense is opportunistic enough to make plays in that, the Ravens' passing attack can't punish the Titans' secondary enough to the extent where I would feel good about taking the Ravens as a road favorite. To me, this is a game where I'm going to take the home dog, and it's more than a live dog. To me, this one's just wrong. I think the Titans should be favored in this one. Derrick Henry is a bad matchup for the Ravens' defense. The Titans' offensive line, even without Taylor Lewan, should still be able to move the Ravens' defensive line and get and create running room for Derrick Henry. And the thing that people just don't acknowledge is the fact that, I kept scratching my head saying, where has this Ryan Tannehill been? And at the end of the day, Adam Gase is a horrific head coach. It's like, I don't, and the more I think about it, the more I'm beginning to realize that maybe Peyton Manning's just that much of a genius, because how Adam Gase was able to fool enough NFL teams thinking that he was an offensive genius, maybe he can only speak to Peyton Manning, because every other QB Adam Gase has touched has just looked worse in comparison, because anyone else that Adam Gase managed throughout his stint in Miami, with Tannehill, when Tannehill was injured and he was working with backups, again, with the Jets and Darnold almost ruining the poor kid. I just look at Ryan Tannehill, the progression that he's made into being a play action QB that can do run pass option has been nothing short of one of the greatest career resurgences you'll see. The only guy I can think of that, turned around his career from where it kind of started to and kind of do it mid-career. It's kind of more along the lines of Jim Harbaugh. Kind of throwing it out there. Like there really aren't that many NFL QBs that struggled the way Tannehill did early in his career and rebound on another team, looking like the guy that folks thought might be a true NFL QB. And part of it is Tannehill says that he got more experience and got more comfortable playing QB because he wasn't a natural QB in college. Part of that's true, but the fact of the matter is he's a natural play action QB, which he wasn't naturally used to such in Miami. Lord knows why. But Tannehill to AJ Brown, folks may not realize this, but it was the third most effective quarterback wide receiver combo in the entire league. A lot of folks are just going to look at this and say it's Derrick Henry or bust for the Titans, but the Titans can beat the Ravens throwing the football. Even if Derrick Henry doesn't have over 100 yards rushing, he should, but there's a chance that maybe the Ravens just lock up the box, just stack the box enough to say, yeah, we're going to let Ryan Tannehill beat us. Tannehill can beat him over the top with AJ Brown. AJ Brown, if you give him single coverage, he's gonna beat that DB. Like as good as Jimmy Smith is for the Ravens, AJ Brown can beat him, and he did beat him last year. Like there is, as I said, I just think sometimes you get a misprice in certain matchups, and I would have thought that the market would have kind of started correcting itself, but folks are really betting hard on the Ravens, and I just don't get it. I really don't get this one. I know Tennessee doesn't have a great defense, but the way to beat Tennessee is through the air, and even though Lamar Jackson has gotten better throwing the football, it's not as though he's been lighting it up. I just look at this as like Tennessee has more ways of winning that matchup. And here's the other thing with Tennessee's passing attack. Corey Davis has finally started to wake up. He was he's a former first round pick, but he was the 5th overall pick in the draft a couple of years ago. It never really clicked with him and Mariota. Even with Tannehill, he really did not have much of a showing, and he was also injury prone earlier on in his career. But this year, he had 65 receptions, almost 1,000 yards receiving. He was at 984, a couple of touchdowns, but he was averaging 15 yards per reception. No, the thing of it is that if you try to throw the double team on AJ Brown, Corey Davis can make you pay as well in the slot. It's not as though Tennessee can't throw the football. They have capable wide receivers, and they have a good tight end in Jonnu Smith. It's just that when you have Derrick Henry, it's a lot easier to run. Oh, and I said Jimmy Smith before. I must have been thinking back a couple of years when Baltimore had Jimmy Smith. It's the number one cornerback for Baltimore now is Marcus Peters, who was formerly on the Rams and won the Super Bowl with the Chiefs last year. It's just I just kind of look at it. I just kind of look at it. It's strange. It really is strange. The more I think about it, in terms of that line, I just don't. I really I really can't get behind that line that the Ravens could actually be favored in this game. I'm not seeing what other the odds makers are seeing. I'll be perfectly honest with you. It just doesn't feel as though you're really gonna get oh, actually, man, I'm dating myself again. It's like Peters wasn't even on the Chiefs last year. He got traded to the Rams. Then the Rams traded Peters to the Ravens. They traded Peters to the Ravens because the Rams were also going to make a trade to get Jalen Ramsey, which again still was one of the more bizarre trades I've seen, because realistically, salary cap wise, the Rams could have afforded both guys, but yeah, I'm rehashing stuff in the past. Back on point, I just think that the Titans have way more options of being able to win that matchup than the Ravens do. It is not. It's not easy for Lamar, unless Lamar has a monster game, and Lamar could do it by himself. He can make it work. I'm very curious about the Ravens and how they approach that game, because if Derrick Henry gets going and he starts chewing up yardage like he did in their showdown last year, I'm wondering if the Ravens get that deja vu effect again, because I could see it happening. The Ravens dropped a lot of passes in that wide receiver core too, in that playoff game. They're going to have to be able to catch passes and make some plays for Lamar. I can see that game going in a very different direction than what most people do, because I expect most people to want to play Lamar Jackson at QB, and they'll just play Derrick Henry. But I think there's a very real possibility you could play Tannehill at 6,600, play AJ Brown, and if you want to, you could still slot in Derrick Henry, because there are cheap options on the Sunday slate for running back to do that, and I'm going to talk about some of these other games. Now, Bears and Saints. I think folks are still not quite getting it with this one. The Saints are home, and they're 10-point favorites. But last time I checked, the entire Saints running back unit was in quarantine last week because of Alvin Kamara's positive test, and because they were all in close proximity, all the other running Latavius Murray and the other running backs were ruled out for Week 17, so you had the practice squad kind of take over for the Saints. But here's the thing for the Saints. Drew Brees still hasn't looked right throwing the football. Michael Thomas has been injured. Michael Thomas should be back for this game. Kamara should be back for the Sunday game. That was one of the key sticking points for the NFL, was scheduling this game on a Sunday to make sure that Kamara would be back in time after the 6 touchdown performance on Christmas Day. Would be kind of ridiculous that you didn't see him again in the postseason. But here's the thing. The Bears still have an excellent defense with Khalil Mack. The Bears can make it very difficult for the Saints to move the football. And as much as I mock him, and the Bears offense in general, with their head coach Matt Nagy, who's supposedly an offensive genius, yet runs some of the most rudimentary offenses because he's stuck with a quarterback that can't make certain throws, the Bears still have talent on that offense with Allen Robinson. Even though the Saints have a good defense, they've been susceptible against the run in the latter half of the year. Once they've started racking up some injuries, their run defense really has slipped in the second half. With some of the personnel changes, and kind of looking at David Montgomery with the strong December that he's had, could be a factor in this one. I think the Bears can keep this one close. This is one where it's got the largest spread, and again, I still think this is a misprice of the line. I originally was on this at 9.5. At 10, I still have to take this one. I don't, the public is betting on this one for the Saints because they remember Kamara's performance and are saying to themselves, the Saints are not losing at home. But again, with COVID and everything else, the Superdome is not going to be the Superdome that you're accustomed to. Yeah, they'll have some fans, but it's only going to be limited to about 2,000 fans. It's not going to be the loud, uproarious playoff atmosphere that you normally have. It's not that huge of a deal. Yeah, you'll hear the crowd. It's just not going to be the massive swing that it would normally be the case. And at Kamara's pricing at 8,500 on DraftKings, 9,000 on FanDuel, I can't see playing Kamara on FanDuel. If Derrick Henry's 10-2 on FanDuel and Kamara's at 9K on FanDuel, given the fact that you don't get the full point per reception, Derrick Henry becomes a far better play on FanDuel. DraftKings, yeah, I can make the case for Kamara on DraftKings because of the receptions that Derrick Henry isn't gonna get. I can see Kamara getting a number of receptions on DraftKings, and that are worth the full point per reception. So I can get there with Kamara because he doesn't necessarily have to get into the end zone on DraftKings. Although at that price tag, he really needs to kind of get into the end zone if you want to have any shot of winning a GPP tournament. But for cash games, I get why you would play Kamara. But, again, Michael Thomas should be back in this game. And at 6,400 on DraftKings and 6,800 on FanDuel, to me, Michael Thomas is the play and lock button play in my mind. If we've got the 2-game slate, you should be locking in Michael Thomas. Because even if Michael Thomas can't play, there are enough players available that you can pivot to use instead on DraftKings and FanDuel if you're playing the 2-game slate for all 6 playoff games. But if Michael Thomas suits up at his price tag, he is the best value on the slate for the entire weekend, because with the Bears defense, they're going to force you to have methodical drives. And the best possession wide receiver in the game, when healthy, is Michael Thomas. That game screams Michael Thomas against the Bears for the Saints to move the chains and keep things going. So to me, it's Michael Thomas, bar none, as the best play on the slate. Sunday slate wise, yes. Saturday and Sunday, maybe you can make the case for you can make the case for Josh Allen being the overall play, or just because of volume alone, or Brady, or Antonio Brown. But again, price tag wise, yeah, if Michael Thomas suits up, Brees is going to be targeting him early and often. No doubt about it. So, on the Bears side, I already brought up David Montgomery. Allen Robinson, solid play. And nothing too fancy about it. If it's the 2-game slate, I'm not playing. I would not be playing. Would not be recommending playing Bears players. But for the Sunday only slate, it makes sense. It makes sense. If you want to do something a little bit different and target the Bears' offensive pieces, I get it. To do a game stack with Robinson and Thomas, it makes sense. It makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that. I probably would opt to drop a little bit further down and play Darnell Mooney, even though he's still questionable for the game because of an ankle injury he's suffered in Week 17 against the Packers. I think at 3,900 on DraftKings, the FanDuel pricing I'm not as excited about. He's 5,400 on FanDuel. I would pass on FanDuel, but on DraftKings at 3,900, Mooney is an appealing play. Like I said, to fit in Derrick Henry and some other more expensive pieces. I can see myself playing Darnell Mooney on the Sunday slate to make the math work. And in terms of salary wise for the Sunday slate, I would kind of be looking at Cole Kmet, and can't believe I'm actually saying this. Jimmy Graham on the Bears. Jimmy Graham, we thought his career was done. We thought he made his money and was good to go and riding off in the sunset. He's been revitalized on the Bears. He's developed a decent rapport with Mitch Trubisky. In the second half of the season, it's at least something to consider. They're both cheap enough on DraftKings and FanDuel that tight end is just always a crapshoot. But Kmet and Graham are two of the top red zone targets for Trubisky. Allen Robinson really does not get that many red zone targets for the Bears. So it's either going to be running it in with David Montgomery or Trubisky to a tight end would be the red zone opportunities for the Bears. So, those are some options you can think about on that side of the fence in that matchup. And then the Sunday night matchup, you got the Steelers hosting the Browns. The Steelers are now 6-point favorites. When this originally opened, the Browns were 3.5 point underdogs, and now at 6 points, I'm taking the Browns. Originally, there was a case to be made that the Steelers could, based off of their start of the year, the Steelers could have gotten a little bit more respect in terms of the betting line. The reason why this line moved up to 6 is that the Browns head coach, Kevin Stefanski, tested positive for COVID and will not be available for the matchup due to isolation procedures. So Stefanski's out. So what people are surmising is that the Browns are just going to struggle moving the football against the Steelers' defense. I would like to remind everyone that when I said the Indianapolis Colts have one of, if not the best offensive line, the reason why I couldn't say definitively that they had the best offensive line is because the Browns might have the best offensive line in football this year, based off of the results in their pass blocking and being an excellent rushing attack as well. They've got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I mean, honestly, if Kareem Hunt was back as a solo running back again, Kareem Hunt would likely be a top 10 rusher in the NFL. he was that good on the Chiefs that I could definitely see Kareem Hunt cracking the top 10 in rushing in the NFL again if he gets if he gets another opportunity to be a starting running back on a team, after everything that transpired over in Kansas City. That being said, the Browns, their best pathway of winning this game is running the ball and running it often against the Steelers defense. Steelers have a good defense. They don't have an excellent defense anymore with Bud Dupree injured. Part of the reason why they struggled in the second half is Dupree's injury really made it more of a focus for TJ Watt to be the man to get sacks and disrupt and also tackle for tackle in the run game. They put a lot on the Steelers' defensive line to get the job done. And, when they had Watt and Dupree healthy, yeah, they can do that because they could both run, stop, and rush the passer. Without Dupree, teams have been able to run on the Steelers. And the Browns are not, it doesn't get much easier. Now, here's the kicker. The Steelers could have avoided this matchup entirely. In Week 17 last week, the Steelers opted to rest Roethlisberger and a number of other starters against the Browns, who needed to win to get in. In most scenarios, the Browns needed that win because otherwise, unless the Colts lost, the Browns were not going to win any tiebreakers against any of the other teams because Miami was still going to be able to get into the postseason. It was only because the Browns won and Miami lost that the Dolphins were eliminated. But why did the Steelers rest their starters? First off, Ben Roethlisberger and that offensive line, they're old. Father Time has caught up to them. Ben can't push the ball down the field. The Steelers' offensive line with Villanueva, Marquise Pouncey. I'm blanking on another guard, but they can't run block anymore. They can't explode off the line of scrimmage. It is very hard for them to get it done. It just is. They are not good run block. David DeCastro. Knew it was gonna come to me eventually, but they just got old. They're still good enough pass blocking wise to get the job done, but the Steelers have had to augment their offense to have Roethlisberger throw the ball even faster. And, it worked out earlier in the season, but it's not as though they were that dominant offensively. I have very much real concerns about the Steelers because, if it wasn't for the fact that Olivier Vernon ruptured his Achilles, I would say that the Browns had a great chance to knock off the Steelers and it not be that close of a game, to be honest. If the Browns pass rush was completely healthy, I could definitely see the Browns making life absolute hell for the Steelers. Absolute hell from a pass block standpoint. And obviously the Steelers, like I said, they can't run the football anymore. James Conner is a backup NFL running back, and the Steelers' offensive line can't create holes, and it just compounds the problem. They can't run the football. So the Browns know what the Steelers are going to do. They pin their ears back and they rush the passer. Like I said, Ben has gotten the ball out of his hands faster than before, but when the Steelers were on their losing streak, teams knew what plays that they're running, and because you knew Ben was throwing the ball as quickly as possible, dump out on the first move, and jam, and then contest the ball as it reaches there. And because Ben doesn't put the same zip on the ball anymore, you can get more pass breakups, which is what you saw with the Steelers as they struggled in the second half of the year, losing to the likes of Washington and some other and a number of other clubs. They just struggled putting it all together, and that miracle comeback against the Colts realistically doesn't happen unless Phillip Rivers, again, just having a complete brain cramp and just making some terrible decisions. But here's the thing. If the Steelers had knocked out the Browns, the most likely scenario is that they would have been stuck playing the Colts again. And I can tell you, the Steelers did not want that matchup with the Colts. The Colts matched up very well against the Steelers in that game and were dominating the Steelers before they let the foot off the gas pedal. Yes, Ben Roethlisberger improvised some old school plays that they hadn't practiced, that the Colts hadn't seen, and they were able to move the ball in the second half because of dialing up some new plays that the Colts hadn't seen, and they caught them off guard. If they had faced the Colts again, honestly, that would have been one of my favorite bets, because the Steelers still would have gotten favored, the Colts would have been dogs, and I would have been 98% sure that the Steelers were going to lose that game to the Colts. Again, knowing that the liability of the Colts is Phillip Rivers, you always put in that 2% chance of Phil completely imploding that game. But considering how much he short-circuited that game, I would have to think that the Colts and Rivers would acknowledge what went wrong and avoid that scenario happening again. That's why I like I said, I could not see the Colts losing to the Steelers again if they matched up. So I think the Steelers realized that and kind of told themselves, we can get to Baker Mayfield and rattle them. Division rival, we see the Browns enough times. We know what they're going to do. We can out-execute them and still beat them. And I think that's how the Steelers went about it. I think the Steelers really felt comfortable with the matchup against the Browns, even though the Browns can run the football on them, and they're not as stout with the run defense as they should be at this stage of the year. I think the Steelers feel more comfortable going up against the Browns than they would have, either playing the Titans, possibly, because there were a bunch of weird scenarios, but they could have ended up playing the Titans or playing the Colts, if not for beating the Browns. But, like I said, it's just one of those cases where, you got to kind of be careful what you wish for, because the Steelers not too long ago were pushing to get the number 1 seed with the Chiefs and fell by the wayside. And now, they're kind of backsliding into the playoffs. I think the Steelers are kind of running out of steam. I think I like the Browns in this matchup, and, I really think you could load up on Nick Chubb being that late game hammer, or going with the Kareem Hunt option. I think they both have very good games against the Steelers. They're not going to be highly owned in that late game. Everyone's going to want to play those earlier games, but I think there's a real opportunity to play the Cleveland running backs in the late game slate and it be a viable opportunity. Now, I know folks are going to want to be playing the Steelers wide receivers because, you have a passing attack where they have to pass because they can't run. So you're going to get volume with Ben and the wide receivers. But Cleveland has a decent enough defense. There really isn't a ton of surprises the Steelers can get by on the Browns. So it's just going to come down to execution. And like I said, it's it's hard to say that you feel good about picking the Steelers to win a matchup. Spread wise, I would definitely take the Browns, but even without Kevin Stefanski on the sidelines, I think as long as Baker Mayfield just plays within the offense, doesn't do anything too crazy, I think they take care of business and come out of Pittsburgh with a win. I really do. It's just, the Browns, even though they dropped a number of games that they should have had in hand, they have the makeup to make a Super Bowl run. It's just that simple. They have great offensive line, excellent defensive line. They have talent at the wide receiver core, even with Odell Beckham Jr. injured. They still have talent at the wide receiver core. They have tight ends that are more than capable. They just don't get used enough. And kind of looking through some of the other metrics, the Browns realistically would be the best defensive play on DraftKings as well, and FanDuel. They're 2,500 on DraftKings. They're 4K on FanDuel. I know people want to play the Steelers wide receivers. I know that. The Browns DBs can't shut down the Steelers. And like I said, the Browns can cause a number of issues with that older offensive line. I really think that the Steelers are in trouble on Sunday night. I really do. To me, the Steelers are going to have to come up with some forward thinking in order to get a win here because, it's a division opponent. They've seen enough of you over the years. You're going to have to get a little bit more creative with the offensive game plan. And because they can't run the ball, I just think it limits your options as to what you kind of catch them off guard with because Big Ben's not moving around as spry as he used to. So even some of the bootlegs, a lot of the Steelers playbook that they would have relied upon over the years just isn't there with this year's team. It's just not. So, as much as it would have shocked me at the beginning of the year to say this heading straight into the playoffs, but, I would much rather be in the Browns' shoes than the Steelers' shoes. It's just, to me, one of the things, like classic cases of where you see a team peaking at the right time versus a team that's just on the downward slope. I don't see much of a pathway for victory for the Steelers unless the Browns open the door and you get turnovers, most likely from Baker Mayfield and at the QB spot. So, that's kind of the slate in a nutshell for Sunday. And like I said, for the combined slate, you have to kind of make your choices on games. But definitely you should be getting exposure to the Buffalo Indy game. Even if you concentrate on the Buffalo guys, that can happen. But, I really feel good about Tampa offensively. And, when it comes to playing the combined slate, like I said, Michael Thomas needs to be in your lineup because if he's suited up and ready to go, you got him at a bargain because he's going to get looks and targets from Breeze. But if he can't go, you still have a couple of options available that can go later on in the evening. So that even Deontay Johnson on the Steelers, you could have an immediate pivot to that. I would probably pivot to a couple of other plays instead if I can't get Michael Thomas. Like I said, I brought up Darnell Mooney on the Bears, and I can get different elsewhere with the budget as needed. But it's definitely an interesting weekend for the wildcard games coming up because there are a number of pathways to go. But as I have often said, as long as you're set in your game plan and what you're looking to accomplish, that's a lot of the battle. Kind of getting over your biases and coming up with different ways of going through your lineup construction. Because at the end of the day, if you can be consistent with your lineup construction and the thought process involved, it's just going to help you overall in terms of being successful in the playoff runs, because you kind of, there's a lot of recency bias that pops up in DFS and the other outlets as well. So don't go too crazy over these things. So that's going to be all for the show. But definitely stay tuned to injury news throughout the weekend, because you're going to learn quite a bit about certain things based off of some of the earlier drafts that I've seen. But it's definitely one of the most interesting weeks of the year. Definitely one of my favorite periods of the NFL season. That first wildcard weekend, should be interesting with the 2 additional games. So that's all for now, folks. Good luck, and until next time, have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.